Tort law is the system of law that governs claims by victims for harm caused by wrongdoing. It covers a host of situations that result in infliction of bodily, emotional, and purely financial harm.
A tort is a wrongful injury, either to your body or to your property.
It is a word that many Americans never utter, yet millions of ordinary citizens have used it to right a wrong and help win them justice.
At its best, tort law is the ultimate democratic right because you don't have to rely on a government agency. If you're injured, you can become a plaintiff and your case is deliberated according to a set of rules in open court to see whether you have a legitimate grievance that can be compensated for.
The roots of this system of judging and compensating for harm done to an individual reach back 1,000 years to Anglo-Saxon England, where the justice system permitted an injured person to recover compensation from the perpetrator of harm.
In the beginning, tort law was a way that the King of England could prevent breaches of the peace, people taking justice into their own hands when they were wronged by somebody else. They would duel. And so in England, they created a way for people to go into court to resolve this kind of disputes.
The first British colonists brought this system with them when they arrived in North America, and it remained in effect even after the American Revolution.
The right to trial by jury has American revolutionary origins. When the protesters against the tyranny of King George III presented the king with a list of complaints, on the list, after no taxation without representation, was the accusation that King George III was taking away their trial by jury. That's how important people in those times felt, was to be judged by a jury of their peers. There's a historic tradition in our country of laws that protect people from wrongful injury.
Over time, that tradition evolved from guarding against the tyranny of kings to confronting new dangers being produced in the industrial age, like the modern miracle product that caused the worst occupational health disaster in U.S. history.
This contemporary home shows how modern asbestos materials can be adapted to any style or design. Notice how the asbestos cement sidewalls help add dignity and charm.
Virtually indestructible and amazingly fireproof, asbestos was used in a wide variety of products for construction, insulation, and fireproofing. But there was one major catch with this miracle mineral.
Asbestos is a naturally occurring material that is literally a poison.
Inhaling asbestos can cause fatal diseases, including cancers and asbestosis, a respiratory illness.
Asbestos disease takes a long time to appear. While people were being poisoned in the early part of the 20th century, we didn't find that out until like the 60s or the 70s. The companies knew about the lethal characteristics of asbestos since the 1930s, and yet they continued to use it.
In case after case, juries found asbestos companies liable for the harm done. Asbestos litigation is the longest, most expensive mass tort in U.S. history, involving more than 8,000 defendants and 700,000 claimants. Workers are now protected when they must handle asbestos.
All of that happened because of victims who were willing to persevere through the court system and their lawyers who were really heroes at the end of the day, because it's the lawyers who worked so hard on behalf of their clients to protect the public from the ravages of asbestos.
There is no official decision-making process in our entire country, not in the executive branch at the local, state, and national level, not in the legislative branches, that comes close to the rigorous fairness and refereeing of the process of bringing a personal injury lawsuit to a court of law.
Torts can send a strong message to corporations that wrongdoing will come at a very high cost to their bottom line: money. In 1992, one woman's breakfast at McDonald's triggered a personal injury lawsuit that changed the entire fast food industry.
The 79-year-old grandmother, Stella Liebeck, had purchased hot coffee, was not driving, was parked, and was trying to get the lid off to put milk and sugar in. She was scalded with very severe burns that required days of hospitalization, skin grafts, and so forth.
Stella's breakfast ended up costing her $10,000 in hospital bills.
She sued basically to get her medical expenses reimbursed, and McDonald's said no.
Stella's lawyers uncovered a disturbing pattern of corporate behavior.
There had been at least 700 complaints already of people who had been scalded by the coffee. McDonald's was selling coffee at superheated temperatures, way above what was recommended. The jury in that case was so disturbed by the callous conduct of McDonald's that they awarded her $2.9 million, which was later reduced by a judge to $640,000.
For Stella Liebeck, what mattered wasn't the size of the award. It was the fact that she had forced McDonald's to be held accountable and fix the problem.
I was not in it for the money. I was in it because I wanted to bring the temperature down so that other people would not go through the same thing I did. If it was a baby, it would have been killed.
In 1971, Ford Motor Company started to manufacture the Pinto. As early as 1972, Ford knew that the car's gas tank could rupture if it was rear-ended and ignite a deadly fire. As a result of this faulty design, 27 people were killed in accidents that Ford could have prevented.
The Ford Motor Company knew that people would die, knew that the product was defective, but calculated it would be less expensive to just compensate the families of the people who were killed and injured and to continue producing the defective Pinto.
A Ford Motor Company memo concluded that the cost of redesigning the Pinto to be safe would far exceed the expense of paying the victims of fatal Pinto accidents $200,000 per human life.
The jury said this isn't right, and they socked Ford with over $100 million in punitive damages. It sent not only a message to Ford, that was a worldwide shock about what the court system can do and what is not acceptable as a business practice.
The case forced better automobile design standards to be developed and helped usher in new safety regulations and rigorous crash testing, which have made cars safer as a result. The value of tort law has been proven again and again. Yet corporations try to undermine tort law by working to weaken and remove regulations and cap damage awards by juries.
The tort system is a very important system. It's a fundamental institution in our democracy, but it's been under attack for about 30, 40 years by a lot of corporate interests that don't want to be held accountable through the tort system.
It's a high-stakes fight for the balance of power between ordinary citizens and wealthy corporate forces.
The forces that are trying to limit the access to the civil justice system are the largest corporations in the world, and the medical lobby and the pharmaceutical companies. And they're aligned against the people, against the public.
There are whole corporate law firms and lobbyists that go to work every day trying to get state legislatures and Congress to restrict the rights of wrongfully injured people. They call that tort reform, which is rather curious because you think reforms expand people's rights rather than contract them, which is why I prefer to use the word tort deform.
It is a David and Goliath effort because we can never match the money on the other side. It's unlimited funds trying to limit access to the civil justice system because it means a lot to those companies not to be held accountable. That's worth a lot of money to them.
If you future of tort law in our country is heavily dependent on how aware people are of their rights when their health and safety and reputations are wrongfully damaged.
It's up to each and every one of us to be vigilant about the threats to our access to justice and to make other people aware of their legal rights when they've been wronged.
The more people who become plaintiffs with legitimate grievances, the more the common law of torts or civil justice will expand to cover new technologies like genetic engineering, nanotechnology, new kinds of products with new hazards that may not be very visible. The more the law will grow to be more protective, more deterrent, and more full of the sense of justice that people must have if they're going to have confidence in the law and in the judicial branch of government.